Here we're talking to James Blewett on emotional resilience. So James, tell us, what is emotional resilience?
Emotional resilience, I think, is something which can sound very obvious and we can intuitively recognise emotional resilience, but actually as a concept I think it's a rather slippery one which actually is quite hard to define and quite hard to pin down. It's a concept which in some respects I think has been around social work from time immemorial, but in the last 10 to 15 years it's become explicitly talked about as being a key part really of social workers' makeup, that we need social workers who are emotionally resilient. I think in terms of what does that mean, what is it? Well, I think it's not people just being tough, people being able to put up with lots and lots of stress, people being able to deal with situations which are very distressing without emotionally responding to them. What I think it is people who can have some insight into the emotional traffic, if you like, that goes on between them and the people who use the services, that they can respond to and be self-aware about how they're feeling towards both colleagues and the people who use services. But crucially for me, and this is where I think it differs from emotional intelligence, can actually take actions and take steps and strategies to deal with that emotional side of the work.
So why do you think it's important to social work practice?
Because I think social work practice is fundamentally about relationships, about building, helping relationships. And we're dealing with people who are often at very vulnerable points in their lives, and therefore the situations that we deal with are often going to be emotive. They're going to, if you like, take an emotional toll on the worker as well as often on the person who needs the service. Also, though, I think at a slightly different level, I think that when we're undertaking assessments, when we're coming to a view about a situation, we often are very organised by our emotional responses. Often where we think cognitively is informed by what's happening for us emotionally, and therefore I think it's crucial that we have some insight into why we're feeling the way we do.
Very true. How does it impact on a social worker's practice with other professionals and with service users?
I think fundamentally what it should mean is that a social worker is more attuned to how other people may be feeling, more attuned particularly to how the people who use services may be experiencing the situation. I think when people are feeling stressed, they're feeling anxious themselves, it's very easy to lose empathy with the people who are using the service. So therefore that's why I think it's crucial that people have a level of emotional resilience within the work.
How do you think it relates to the professional capabilities framework and the knowledge and skills statements?
Well, I think in many ways it runs right through both of those sets of standards. I think within the PCF, I think clearly the knowledge, the critical analysis and reflection capability is very much bound up with emotional intelligence. Why? Because I think that the informal process of reflection involves a level of self-awareness about emotion, where people are at emotionally. But also I think emotional intelligence is also about managing boundaries. So therefore I think it's very relevant to contexts and organisations. I think teams are a key support for social workers very often, but they're often quite complicated places emotionally as well as organisationally for people. And social workers need to be able to manage some of that complexity. But also, of course, crucially, boundaries with people who use services, and that's where I think professionalism is very important. In terms of the knowledge and skills statements, in both the adults and the children's statements, a whole number of processes such as assessments, such as risk management, such as organisations, all require, I think, some self-awareness and insight into the emotional processes that are going on for a practitioner.
What do you think social workers can do to learn more about emotional resilience or to improve what they already do?
It's interesting, I think, because this is where I think the literature can be, when you look at some of the articles that have been written around both emotional intelligence and emotional resilience, they both acknowledge really that it isn't an easy concept to define and to pin down. I don't think there is a certain knowledge base you necessarily need about emotional resilience or intelligence. What I think is crucial is that you have some understanding of what are some of the strategies that you can put in place to make yourself more emotionally resilient within the workplace. And I think that central to that really is how you build support networks around yourself in the workplace. Some of that, the responsibility will lie with your employer. Your employer needs to, for example, provide good supervision, regular supervision. But how well that supervision works isn't just the responsibility of your organisation, also you as the supervisor, you have some responsibility. I think beyond that though, how you build networks around yourself at the more informal level in the workplace. Who are the trusted colleagues that you can go to and talk through dilemmas and issues that are coming up in the work? Who are perhaps professionals in other organisations who can become key allies when you're trying to untangle and sort out key professional dilemmas? As well as those networks, I think another key component is how you are able not just to be self-aware, but also see yourself within the bigger picture. And I think that's where continuing professional development, but also thinking about where you're going strategically in your career, can help you ride out some of the very short-term pressures and stresses that build up. The last thing is just to say, and this is easy to say and much harder to do, is to know when you're getting to your capacity, need to know when you perhaps need to look after yourself more, need to know that actually walking away from a task might not feel doable in the short term, but in the longer term it'll make you it'll make your social work practice much more sustainable.
Great, thank you very much, James. And for more information, you can look at our reflective companion that goes along with this micro session.